Hi guys, it's Grant Nelson again here with the Mustache Off-Grid YouTube channel. In case you're new to the channel, I cover different off-grid and homesteading topics, and I try to do things in an old-fashioned way. I live off-grid out here in southern Missouri in a one-room cabin. A couple projects I'm working on right now. I just kind of finishing up building an outhouse, post-frame building. Also, I'm planning on building a log cabin. Sorry, I'm swatting these flies here, guys. I put out a lot of different videos on homesteading skills and tips and tricks, but feel free to tune in the channel if any of that stuff interests you. I do like to do kind of a podcast style talk every Tuesday, and that's what I'm doing in this video here. Today what I'm going to discuss is kind of skills that I learned growing up on a farm rurally that helped me out here going off grid. And this was a question that I got from one of the viewers, the thing that I learned, I think, growing up that helps a lot, you know, growing up on a farm and such, is there's a certain toughness and a certain responsibility. You know, I used to raise rabbits in grade school when I lived in town before I moved to the farm, so I learned some skills with that, but also the responsibility of feeding, watering, and you know, being accountable for the animals. I think it's something that a lot of people are lacking. Also, another thing that it teaches you on a homestead is that it teaches you it kind of toughens you up a little bit, and it kind of hardens you a little bit, and it teaches you a lot about not only life when an animal gives birth, and you see an animal give birth, and you bred an animal, and you raise that animal from, you know, coming out of the mother all the way up till it's a mature adult, and you're going to butcher it. But it teaches you about life, but it also teaches you not only about life, but about death, and that is something that we lack today in our society. People are so, it's hard for people to butcher an animal because they've watched so many Disney shows and everything like that, and there's a certain, how can you put it, a certain stigma that animals are people. And, you know, I love the animals as much as everyone else, but I know that there's a fine line in that. And God gave people dominion over the animals. If you read the Bible in Genesis, I'm not saying animals don't have souls and things like that, but I'm saying that it's our job to treat the animals respectfully and treat the animals nice and good. But also the Lord did give us those animals to eat and provide, and that's clear in Genesis as well if you read the Bible. I'm a Bible person, guys. I like to read the Bible. I'm a Christian. If you're not, that's okay. You know, I'd love to talk with you more about it. But anyway, that's my opinion on it. But also, not just butchering an animal, but also animals, they don't all live. Sometimes animals are born dead. Sometimes animals die. They get sick just like people, and animals die just like people die. I'm sure a lot of people watching, if you aren't off-grid, you know, maybe at some point in your life you've had to put a dog down, or you've had a dog that's gotten sick and died in your life. They don't live the same lifespan as people, so it's inevitable that if you have a cow, eventually that cow is gonna pass away. And it helps you deal with that because you're used to it, especially if you've got a lot of animals. Things happen. Animals die. Now, majority of the animals, 95, maybe even 99% of your animals are going to be just fine. You're never going to have a problem with it. I mean, eventually you will at some point, you know, when they're older. But just like people, there's anomalies and disease, illness, injury, predators, things happen, and it helps you kind of harden yourself to those circumstances. It helps you deal with not only life, growing up really on a farm, but also death, and being able to deal with death with animals. With people, it's different because you have a little bit more emotion and things like that. I'm not saying I don't have that for animals either. I'm just saying that um, most people mean more to me, and I have a higher sanctity for life on people. I'm not saying that I don't, like I said, I'm not saying that I don't respect the animals, I don't love the animals, I don't take care of the animals. They wouldn't have a life if I didn't create them in the first place, you know, breeding the animals. But I do have the animals for a reason, and I do have the animals to provide food. And the people have been doing that for thousands of years, and I don't feel bad about that. Um, that's the way that the Lord set it up. Anyway, the next thing I was going to talk about here, that was one thing. I think it also teaches you just general skills, general knowledge that applies to homesteading, you know, whether it's growing crops or things like that. Now, I've never been a very good gardener. We've never really grown a big garden on my farms. We've grown fields of corn and things like that, but it's different than when you go out on a homestead and you're doing organic gardening. But some principles you do just kind of pick up. You know that manure is good in the soil. You know that compost is good in the soil. You know that some people like to till the soil. I'm doing no-till out here because of the way the soil is, but you learn a little bit about growing crops. You learn a little bit about livestock, like I kind of talked about a minute ago. And you just learn some basic things. And another thing that I learned that helped me a little bit, I think, was my dad taught me a lot about hunting, fishing, the outdoors, kind of helped me learn a little bit about that stuff. And I think that's pretty common in rural communities to learn about hunting, fishing, the outdoors. Camping, things like that, I think are pretty common, and I think that those things are a very good basis for going out and starting homesteading. If you've never lived rurally, you've never been in the woods or the wild, but man just has a natural desire, in my opinion, to go out to the land and make something of it, and not necessarily make something of it, but to go out to the land and build a cabin, live in the woods. Man just has a natural desire to go to the land. A lot of people don't even know it because they've never seen it, but I kind of believe that the Lord gives us all an innate sense to go to the land. You know, it's just kind of a natural thing that you're looking to find a place and go out there and live in the woods, you know. You kind of think, I kind of like to think of the old time homesteaders back in the 1800s, 1700s, even back into, you know, far back, like tribal Native American days, or even Middle Ages, you know, that far back, and how people, you know, lived. And a lot of them went out, you know, to some pretty desolate places. Now, generally speaking, almost everyone that was good and had a lot of success was at least within a vicinity that they could get to a group of people. Not saying that there wasn't people that are successful, you know, way out in a desolate area, you know, like Antarctica or something like that, but I'm saying that most people have some sort of a unity and community that they can at least get to trade with, barter with, things like that, because you can't produce everything from your own land, and especially you can't do that right away. There is a possibility to produce everything you need from your land, but there might be some things that you want that you might have to trade for that could make your life a lot easier. Just my 2 cents on it. I recommend, if you're going off grid, try to find a rural plot of land that's not in town, but maybe within 40 minutes of a town that you could get supplies in. That would kind of be you could probably go a little further than that, and you'd have to, be at a situation where you go and buy bulk, once every few months or 6 months or a year, something like that. But you do need to be able to get some things. Like, you need to be able to get nails if you're not blacksmithing them yourself. You need to be able to get wood if you're not milling it yourself. Anyway, that's just, just a little bit of a tip there, kind of talk. You want stuff that's rural, but not so far away that you can't have access to some of the things you need. And I'm not saying that I necessarily want to be close to the town or those things, but there are certain things that you need to get there. And a lot of those things are imported in from other places. Think about how much of our product here in this country is made in China. But a lot of the stuff we actually need to use. And it's imported in, and you go to Walmart to get it, and Walmart's in a town somewhere. So it's kind of almost like a trade hub, is the way I look at it, if you're looking at it in an old time perspective. Once you get your place built up, you don't have to go to the town if you don't want to. But it's just a point that it's going to help you have the ability to be able to build your land to where you want it. If you can be within 45 minutes of a place that you can go once every few months, or once every 6 months, or once every year, or once every week to get supplies, that's going to help you a lot. Another thing that I was just going to address here, this is kind of a little bit on the same topic, but off the topic a little bit. How can I put it? What do you eat off grid, and kind of an affordable way to eat off grid. Now, when you first come out to the land and you're working it, you're not going to be able to produce much. A lot of people talk about foraging, and I do forage a lot of stuff. I actually plan on having a few forage videos on some wild plants and some things like that I use a lot of. But as far as picking grass and leaves and twigs and things like that and eating them, you're not going to live on that. You might get by on that. It might buy you some time if you're in a survival situation. I have a couple different foraging books that I have read that I really enjoy. One of them is the Army survival foraging book. I don't know if that's the exact name, but it does specifically state at the beginning of the book that your best chance of survival in a survival situation is finding animal flesh to eat, and that foraging should be a secondary option. So if you're in a place that you can hunt and fish, that's going to help you be able to get some food from your land right away. I have little doubt that if everything cut off, just the wildlife on my land I could live off of for quite a long time, foraging and hunting. It wouldn't be a fun time, but it would be a time, and I would live. I could live a long, long time out here just off the land. Like I said, it wouldn't be a fun time, but I could make it. And those things do help. And the way I look at it is the deer eats the grass and the acorns that come off your own land, and it's basically converting your land into meat in a way, wildly, naturally. Same with fish and other things like that, that live in a pond on your property. They're converting the algae and the insects and the bugs and the things like that, and the minnows in your pond. They're converting your pond into meat. So your land can actually produce a little bit of your food straight for you, and if you have enough acreage, it can produce it all for sure. back to what I was talking about is the budgeting and what you can eat off grid. I read a book, 50 Years a Trapper, and it was a great book about a man that I think he trapped between the 1870s and 1920s. And it was real rugged trapping he did. He trapped in all kinds of places, out in the west, out in the south, up north, out east. He trapped everywhere from Pennsylvania to California. He trapped in the Rockies. He trapped down in the desert. He trapped in the south. He trapped in the Midwest. He trapped everywhere. And he actually did bear trapping. And a lot of times he didn't even have steel traps. So they would set a deadfall, which is like a rock or a tree that'll fall on the bear and catch it. Now he'd trap other things too, but bear was his favorite. That being said, his grocery list consisted of rice, beans, flour, salt pork in lard, sugar, coffee, and salt. And I believe baking powder he added later on. And he said that the most important thing was the beans. And this was all dry goods that they used back then. Truthfully, my grocery list consists of those things mostly. I don't eat a ton of flour, but if you want to have flour, you can. Make pancakes, fry bread, things like that. Some very basic recipes you can make with flour. Hardtack, like they used to eat in the Civil War and, you know, beforehand. They've used that for thousands of years. And, you know, it's funny, I've made that before just to try it and practice, you know, cooking with just flour and salt. And I actually really liked it. It's a little bit hard, but the point of it is you're supposed to throw it in something. So I usually throw it in my beans or in my, you know, it says you can dip it in your coffee. I think it tastes basically just like a cracker. It's just a hard cracker. So anyway, got a bug on the camera here. Anyway, you can cook a lot of things just with flour alone, especially if you're out in the wilderness somewhere. I would recommend having a more balanced diet than that. And like I said, the book recommended rice, beans, flour, salt, spices, coffee, beans, if I didn't already say that. He said make sure not to forget the beans, and I agree with that. He said they are the meat and the bread. Salt pork and lard to cook with, and then he said he would just eat his wild game that he caught and everything like that as well. And coffee. He said that they did bring coffee with. Now those were things that they brought, and he would go back to civilization every 6 months, and then he would go back in the fall to a new state or a new place or the same place and trap. So just keep that in mind as far as it goes. That's just a very simple, basic grocery list that you can stick by, and you'd be surprised what you can make with that stuff. If you got some beans and you catch some wild game, or you have animals you're producing and you throw it in there and kind of boil it in and put some salt and some spices in, you'd be surprised how good the beans are. And you know, add a little rice and you've almost got yourself, you pretty much got yourself a full meal, some vegetables, things like that. But it's a very basic grocery list, and really you can stick to that list and get enough to eat for a long time out in the wilderness somewhere, just with those basic things that I listed there. So that's one thing I just wanted to mention, you know, kind of budget grocery list for survival off grid. You know, like I said, I recommend being at a place that you can get some things you need, but everything you buy pre-packaged, the ingredients in it cost about 1/10 of the price. If you really look into it, guys, the flour, the preservatives, the meat, the cheese, everything that they put into let's say a Hot Pocket, because that's a common packaged processed thing, everything that they put in that, the cost to make it is, like I said, it's a fraction of what they sell it for. They pay you for the packaging, the shipping. They charge, not pay you, they charge you for the packaging, the shipping, and everything like that. So just consider that, guys. When you're buying prepackaged foods, it costs at least 4 times the price, many times 10 times plus the price. Think, you know, if you like, you know, it's just factual information if you look at it. Another thing that I add to that list, this is a big one. My favorite off-grid food is potatoes. You can get potatoes for cheap. They're one of the few fresh vegetables that keep well in a wide variety of ways. And as long as you keep them in a dry, cool area, they will last 6 months plus. So potatoes are something that's a staple out here for me. I do buy some Spam and things like that, some canned things, which aren't bad. But mostly, honestly, I would say 70% plus of my food comes from my land. All my eggs come from my chickens. I've got a nice garden. I eat a lot of the rabbits. I eat a lot of the pigeons. I eat some of the chickens. I am planning on doing some hogs so that I can get some pork, and I eat deer in the winter time a lot of times, and I actually grew most of my potatoes this year. So but yeah, potatoes are another thing. If you can buy potatoes, I add that to that grocery list that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, so that's just a couple things to know if you're budgeting your grocery list off grid. I just figured I'd mention it. Now, last thing I wanted to mention is the best states to go off grid. And this is just an opinion. This is just my list, guys. I ranked them in order. And I ranked them in terms of affordability, codes and laws, the wildlife and self-sufficiency, the ability to produce your food, water, and shelter, which are the most important things if you're going out and looking for a property to live off grid. Because if you're going to live off that property, off the grid, and not use the societal grid, you need to be able to produce your food, water, shelter, and heat. And you know, climatize. Climate control, I guess you could say. So consider that if you're planning on going off grid. Can you produce those things from the land you're looking at? I listed the states right here. Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama. I listed the Carolinas as one, and then I listed Florida, Texas, Arizona. That was in a row on my list. That's Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, the Carolinas, Florida, Texas, Arizona. And I know there's a difference in the Carolinas, guys, but just, I get that. But anyway, I try not to be political on my channel, but I would try to say most of the liberal areas tend to have a lot more rules and regulations. Just an opinion. Also a lot more problems that I don't want to deal with. Speaking of the states that I listed here, the Ozarks out here between Missouri and Arkansas are wonderful. They also stretch a little bit in Oklahoma and Tennessee, I believe, as well. That's part of the reason those are some of the top states. Now, these are also based on affordability, how cheap the land is. Oklahoma and Kansas have cheap land. It's a lot of clay land, but you can grow stuff in clay. It's hard to grow stuff in rock like it is out here. We have good soil, but it's got a lot of rocks. But, you know, I look at the soil quality and what you're getting for your money, and I think that those are good places. Now, sometimes they do lack some trees in some places, so that's something to consider, because you really do need trees, in my opinion, to be self-sufficient, because you need to be able to heat yourself in the winter and cook your food. That's why kind of Tennessee and Kentucky get up there. They have plenty of trees, plenty of woodland. The land's still fairly affordable in some places, but man, everything's going up in price a lot. And we all know that, but there's still some affordable places. I saw 5 acres down here in Arkansas, south of me, because I'm in Missouri, for $15K for 5 acres. Now, it's a little bit rugged land. It's no one's ever lived there or anything like that, and you'll never get electricity to it. But that being said, 15K for 5 acres, you know, to me, if you're going to go off grid, something like that would be perfect for someone that's looking to do it on a budget. There's a lot of other properties like that. I'm not advertising the properties. I'm just saying there are deals out there on properties. If you're willing to do the work, if you're willing to do the stuff that you have to do to live off your land. That's just my opinion on those states, guys. The desert land, I like the climate. I like the climate, and some of the codes are pretty lax down the desert and stuff. They don't have water. They don't have wildlife to survive in a lot of it. So, you know, there's going to be a great adaptation in some of those places. But the affordability, the price-wise, is, if that's all you got, can be pretty good. And it seems like that land's only going for about half the price of Ozarks land, honestly, which is kind of crazy to me. Anyway, that's just my top states there, and a little bit of talk on what you need to look for. The last thing I was going to say for the video, I did make a video here. I'm in the Missouri and Arkansas Ozarks, and if you're considering homesteading, most of the top homesteading channels, if you watch them, Doug and Stacy, American Homestead, some of the other ones as well. I think the Prepared Homestead's one I watch, a bunch of other ones. They all have, most of them live in the Ozark regions. You know, so just consider that. Most of the best channels for homesteading are all in the region, and that was part of the reason that got me to it. And they talked a little bit about some of the same stuff I talked about here. So yeah, consider the Ozarks. I think it's the best place if you're going to homestead. Affordability wise, it's probably the cheapest in the country still, other than some places where sustainability would be pretty hard. Talking about the Ozarks though, I made a great video here. It was actually my birthday recently, and my mom came down to visit, and we took a trip down in Arkansas to Blanchard Springs Cave in the St. Francis National Forest down there in St. Francis County. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful trip down there, and the cave was amazing. And I made a video on it, so if you guys are interested in looking at the area, seeing the area, and you've never been out this way, you know, watch the video if you're interested in just seeing some of the beauty of the Ozarks and seeing the Blanchard Springs Cave. That's one of the fun things about the Ozarks. Anyway, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to email the channel email mustacheoffgrid188@gmail.com, or drop a comment below. Thank you for watching, and God bless you, and see you next time. Sit. Sit. Come on, sit. Oh, good boy. Good boy. Lay down. Lay down. All right. Good boy. Hey, guys, let's make Bailey famous. Let's make Bailey famous. Like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Mustache Off Grid. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and God bless. Let's make Bailey famous, guys.